I'm Randy Wilburn, Director of Education at Zweig Group. Welcome to our online ZLearning course, Writing Better Texts, Emails, and Letters. This one-hour continuing education program will help you to develop and strengthen your business writing skills. You may not end up writing like John Updike, Danielle Steele, James Pattison, or even our guest Mark Zweig, but you will make sense when you write, and people will thank you for it. We've come up with a range of simple ideas and hacks to make your writing shine. Whether you are sending a text, email, or proposal, we have some ideas that will help you be better at writing, a process that many people fear. Today, we are with Zweig Group Chairman and industry expert Mark Zweig. Mark is the author of several books for the design industry, including Human Resource Management, the complete guidebook for design firms. Mark is also the publisher and editorial writer for the Zweig Letter, a newsletter for the design industry run by Zweig Group continuously since 1992. Mark's writing style is inspiring and fun to read. Let's see if we can learn a thing or two from him today. Hey Mark, thanks for joining us today.
How's it going, Randy? Good to see you.
It's going good. It's good to see you again.
Good.
Wow, can't believe we're recording our third series here, and it should be an exciting one. So let's see how it goes. Let's walk step by step through some simple ways that our audience of engineers and architects can develop and fine-tune their writing skills.
Sounds good to me. Where do you want to start, man?
Well, I think what I'd like to do is, when it comes to writing something, anything for that matter, you think it's important to know who you're writing to or know your audience.
Absolutely. I mean, how else can you be appropriate? You got to know them. You got to understand them. You need to know their prejudices. You need to know their orientation. I mean, all these things affect how you write and what you put down on paper to somebody.
Okay. I mean, it's almost like when you speak, sometimes if you're speaking to a group, you need to know who you're speaking to. It's the same way. I mean, it's in this form of communication, which is writing, you have to really consider your audience.
Exactly. I mean, it just makes sense. If your audience is a highly educated group of technical people from one particular discipline, for example,
right,
you wouldn't write the same way to them that you would a group of high school freshmen.
Right.
They're different. They've
Yeah.
got a different view. They've got a different understanding of things. They've got a different background.
Yeah.
So sure, know that. I think it's critical. It's the first place to start.
Okay. All right. You also think it's a good idea to determine who should be included in your communications. Do you make any distinctions between when you're communicating via email, when you're communicating with a letter to a client, or maybe a proposal writing? I mean, how do you make those distinctions?
Well, I mean, I think people don't really think about who should be included.
Okay.
If you take a project report, for example, a project status report, many times the conventional wisdom is I will include whoever it is that I deal with on a day-to-day basis in my client's organization.
Yep.
On the project status report.
Okay.
Seems to make sense until there's a problem. Okay. One day when they don't give you certain information you need, or somebody doesn't do something that they need, and it's now affecting your performance on the project, meaning maybe the schedule's in jeopardy or the budget's going out of control or whatever because of something that's happening at the client's end. So now you need to basically rat out the person that you're dealing with on a daily basis because they're responsible for this
Right.
problem.
Yeah.
Okay. And so now you include their boss. Well, you just alienated the person right away who you're dealing with, and they're going to hate you from that point on.
Right.
So you can't do it like that. What you should have been doing is all along, from the very first report, you should have been including the boss.
Right.
And then when there's a problem, it's just part of the normal course of business that it's evidenced. Okay. And so you're much less likely to alienate your client contact in that case.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's just one of many examples. I think, the other thing you have to consider is some people are just burnt out. I mean, reply to all is so overused. And we have the same problem, as you're well aware of, in our own firm.
Right, right.
But I see it at the University of Arkansas where I teach. It's like, can you meet at 2:30 on Friday? And then it's like, well, I can, well, I can't, well, I could, except my daughter's got to go to the doctor. I mean, it's like, okay, just respond to whoever the damn sender is.
Yeah.
Don't copy, and you see this with clients. It's like we're trying to arrange a meeting, and there's maybe 5 or 6 on our side and of the deal, and they're only going to meet or have a call with one person on our team, and yet all of us have to see the 17 emails that go back and forth to set up the one call with one person on our team.
Mm-hmm.
That wastes a lot of time, and I think it's crazy.
Well, and you bring up a good point there, and I certainly something I would love to just kind of delve into a little bit more is determining who should, like you said, in determining who should actually get the communication that you're sending out. This reply all has kind of killed people over and over again. What would be?
I wonder how much productivity is lost to reply.
Just
to
reply all.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it has to
exactly.
be like a multi-billion-dollar problem, of time wasting.
Well,
deleting the replies to all.
they have done some studies on the productivity of just checking your email in general, right? And so a lot of times the email that you're checking will include some email exchanges that are reply all, where you're thinking in the back of your mind, I probably could have been left out of this communication easily.
Yes.
And we see it all the time. We'll send a message
we
to a
do.
principal at a firm, and we'll communicate with them, and I'll say specifically, hey, I'd like to connect with you so you and I can speak, and then he'll still reply all to everyone,
Yes.
even though I was
maddening.
basically saying you and I should speak.
Right.
So it tells me two things. Either he's rushing to respond and he's not really reading what I'm writing in
Which
the
is
first place,
possible,
which
yeah.
is possible,
Right.
or he just doesn't care.
Yeah.
It just
Or he's trying to show somebody else that he's doing his job.
yeah.
I think that's another possibility. I think
Yeah.
that's a big part of the reply to all problem. Is I want to show other people, like I want to show my boss that I care about Sue, so I reply to all
Right.
and thank Sue
Yeah.
in front of everybody.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That says I'm a good team player. And, so I think there's so many problems with it, but companies really need to discuss it and work on this. I mean, who is going to get the communication? Are we going to the right person?
Yeah.
It's frequently a problem.
And you bring up a good point. I'm obviously, we try to practice what we preach at Zweig Group, but I think it's important. We try. I think it's important to set some standards. And I can remember not too long ago, maybe in the last year or so, we put out an edict, if you will, of how communication would go down, specifically written communication. So emails, text messaging, things of that nature, especially when going back and forth with a client. Unless a client wants you to email them at 6 o'clock on a Saturday night, it might not be a good idea to do that. But it's the idea that you need to give a framework sometimes to your organization so they know exactly what are the best procedures and protocols to operate with.
Absolutely. I mean, I've had confrontations with people before that work perhaps in another location of our firm and yet decide every single Friday at 6:30 to start emailing
Right.
or texting.
Yeah.
It's like, I've been here all day long, okay? I just got my kids, and now is when you want to choose to interact with me. And it's just unacceptable. But I mean, that's another matter in itself, is the timing of these communications. But you got to get the right person. I think a lot of times, too, in a selling situation, we're not aiming high enough in the organization. Right. So when we write those proposals, maybe we do need to include some people at a higher level than perhaps who we're dealing with. Yeah. So they're aware that we're talking with somebody in their organization about doing work. Or maybe it's somebody that can influence the process for us that we know is at a higher level, but it's not necessarily involved with this particular project. May be helpful to let them know that we're trying to gain work from the company so they can work on our behalf.
Exactly.
There's a lot to it. I think, people just need to think about it instead of just doing things. Who isn't included can really be a demotivator internally.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's one of the problems with some of these email groups is they're not maintained new people come and then they're not included in the group, and then they think they're not only are they not included, they think they're being deliberately excluded.
Right.
And that's terrible for morale. So you really have to be careful with those groups, because they get out of date, and so you don't have the right people on the group.
Yeah, and I think we've actually pretty much done away with that, and I've seen a lot of other firms that have gotten rid of that, and just you just email the people that need to be emailed and call it a day, and so that there are no more groups, and you don't have to worry about that. So, well, that's good, and I think we're actually going to get back and talk a little bit more about that part of it in a minute. Well, Mark, you mentioned that writing clearly is another challenge that most people face. Why is it important to understand the point you want to get across and make sure that you share it early and often?
Well, because you're trying to communicate something to somebody, and it's your responsibility to make sure that they understand it. And obfuscating it, one of my favorite words, it's an obfuscation in itself.
Right.
To say obfuscate.
That's a 25-cent word. We're gonna talk about those in a minute. So
obfuscating it doesn't help anybody. I mean, people need to be succinct.
Yeah.
It's respectful of the other person's time. They don't want to wade through all your BS in order to get to what they're interested in.
Yeah.
Everybody's really busy. So I think if you don't communicate clearly and succinctly, then you are showing disrespect for the person, because you're saying, I don't value your time. You have to wade through all my BS here in order to get to what you're interested in.
Yeah. Or I sometimes feel like, especially with writing, I think one of the issues that comes up is that people haven't taken the time to consider exactly what they want to say. So they just say everything and throw the kitchen sink in there, and then hope that in that process that something will come across to the audience.
Well, that's the same reason why in the AE business, when we're selling, we talk about so many features.
Right.
We're a multidisciplinary firm, my favorite word, because it's not even a word, by the way. Disciplinary. We're a multidisciplinary firm. We've been in business 72 years. We have registered professionals in 37 states and Puerto Rico or whatever. All that stuff, it's just features, and we hope that clients will figure out, there's a benefit to that the fact that they've done this for 70 years, that's good for me. They'll be cheaper, they'll be faster, they'll be more efficient, they'll be better quality, whatever. But those are the real benefits, cheaper, faster, better. And we're hoping that people make that leap from the feature to the benefit. So it's kind of like that, I think that's a big problem, why writing isn't very clear. The other thing, if you look at this business, the amount of jargon that's used, the acronyms that people use that no one else understands,
right.
Huge problem.
Yeah.
It really is. It's just, I see people do it regularly, and I'm like, look, I've been doing this stuff for 38 years. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. So how do you think somebody that hasn't been doing this for this long is going to understand you?
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's there's a lot of reasons why people aren't clear. Sometimes I think people do it deliberately. It makes them feel like they're smarter than the other people. I understand this, but you don't, and I'm not really going to help you understand it by what I'm going to tell you next.
Yeah. Which is kind of messed up, though, when you think about it, because if the person that you're trying to get to understand something is the one paying the bill,
it's kind of messed up.
Then you have a problem.
Well, if they understand it, then they won't need me. I think some people think like that.
Right.
It's like a deep-seated insecurity.
Yeah.
And it's terrible. Yeah. It really is. I don't know if we're going to get to it, but I think one of the biggest problems relating to a lack of clarity comes in with the old English that people like to use.
Yeah, we're going to talk about stilted language effect later, because we're going in a sequenced order just to kind of make sense. Because again, this idea is that this is not an English class. We're not, going to overnight transform your writing. What we're trying to do here is give
We
you.
could.
Well, yeah, we could, just slowly but surely. But I mean, again, I'm a big fan of yours, Mark, because you're a really good writer. I mean, everything that we're going to talk about today, I know that you believe it and you practice it, which is really important. The craft of writing, it's not like you just rolled out of bed one day when you were growing up and you were an awesome writer. You got better over time. And I think anybody listening to this has to understand that to write well, you have to practice.
You got to write.
Right, and you have to write. Period.
Yeah, it's like you want to be a good musician, you better be playing a lot.
Exactly.
You want to be good at a sport, you better be playing it. You can't
Yeah.
just do it
No.
every so often and then suddenly be great at it.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
That's a good
So,
point.
so you have to write. So you can't just watch this. You can't just take a course on Udemy or wherever or read a book and all of a sudden become a great writer. You have to practice it. It's an art. It takes time, but trust me, even small incremental changes in your writing habits and style will be appreciated by your audience. And once you can do that and then you can learn to effectively communicate that way, it will make a world of difference for you in the things that you're doing within your firm and within your organization and even in your personal life. So we'll leave it at that. So let's move on. I want to talk a little bit about the fact that you mentioned that speed is a key to writing effectively. And I know in my mind, I think I know what this means. I learned a lot about that during my stint in the newsroom at ABC there in Washington, D.C. And I know you can bang something out quickly, but explain the importance of writing quickly and effectively.
Well, if you're going to write quick, you don't have a lot of time to waste. You're
Right.
probably not going to be writing stuff in a flowery, overly verbose style.
Right, right.
But I think the main thing is that people want response,
Right.
and it's the one thing you can do in business today that differentiates you. And to me, it shows respect. If the person requests some information or needs input on something, and you can immediately provide that, everybody likes that.
Yeah.
You're more service oriented. You care about them. You care about them enough to respond quickly.
Right.
And so, it's one of the biggest problems I see today is this whole idea of doing stuff right away. I just had this discussion with somebody yesterday that works in one of my businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the whole idea that, if something needs to be done, like I could say we need to do X, and then that person writes it down. Instead of doing X right then, X might take 10 seconds, to actually do. But instead the response is, I'll write it down and do it later.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think happens half the time? They forget.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or the timeliness is lost. We needed to be responding faster. People are waiting for us. They're making decisions.
Yeah.
They're waiting for us to provide the information they need so they can keep moving in their job. It's everything is linked. We're all so tied together. Everything is a cooperative effort. Everything takes lots of people. And so that's one of the reasons to be speedy. But the other reason to be speedy is the actual writing itself is going to be better.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll be more, you won't overly work something. You won't wordsmith it to death. You'll be more inclined to write what you're thinking instead of massaging it, going back and back and back to massage. A lot of times it's kind of like art. If you've ever painted, and I know your father was a painter,
Right.
you can overwork a painting.
Exactly.
You can do one and you can say, it's done, I like it. Or you can go, well, I need to do this, that, and then fart around with it and then put it aside for a while, 2 weeks, and then go back to it. Most of the time when you do that, it's not any better than it would have been if you'd have just banged it out and finished it up right away.
Right.
In fact, it may be worse.
Yeah.
Some things just don't get better with age. They get worse.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good point. And I like the idea that, that you mentioned here about, just getting it done quickly. One of the things I learned in the newsroom was to write like you talk.
Yeah.
To
Absolutely.
communicate to people like you talk, because and in most cases, and I know we're going to get into the flowery language and the things that people are doing. But some of the things that I picked up while working in the newsroom that really helped me as a writer was just to kind of, in my mind, how would I say this? And then when I say it, I just write it out, and
Exactly.
it's so much easier, and it flows faster. It's like, because I can
Right, like you
we can
speak.
all have a conversation with ourselves, and it's easy to do. And most of us would never converse with ourselves or anyone else for that matter the way that we write.
Well, we should, but you're right, because there's this idea that when I do business writing, I'm going to make it sound weird.
Or make it
And
sound like, justify your MBA or,
yeah,
whatever.
exactly.
So, yeah.
I just said this to somebody the other day, though. I commented, and it was inside the firm, and it was funny because I got no response out of the guy.
Mm-hmm.
But he sends out something. It's like, please find the attached, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Is that the way you talk? I'm like, just drop, please find.
Yeah.
You could just say attached is your
here it
proposal's
is.
attached.
Here's
Your proposal.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
whatever. But it's like, please find. I said, can you imagine if I went up to somebody and I said, Randy, please find attached my business card.
Right.
You'd be like, what the hell's wrong with you? Zweig?
Silly.
It's silly.
Yeah.
It's done all the time. It's like, oh, now I'm going to do some business writing. Whoa, I'll slide into this weird alternate persona.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Give me a green eye shade now and let me go out to my carriage in my, Victorian era London or some damn thing.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And I think part of that, to kind of piggyback in the next idea, is that, in addition to writing quickly, you mentioned that you suggest that brevity is key in our writing.
They
So
all say
many
it's
people,
easier to write long than it is short.
right? So many people are long-winded in their writing style. How can you, or how can they rather, overcome that when it comes to writing? What are some tips?
Well, I think one of the biggest problems, if you just took what you wrote and then you started getting rid of unnecessary words,
Mm-hmm.
you'd find out you could cut everything down.
Right.
But I think the biggest problem with people being poor writers is that they don't read anything,
Okay.
or they're not reading the right things. If they were, then that becomes your sort of frame of reference. So things either look right or don't look right,
Right.
because you've got a lot of experience reading good writing.
Right.
And people don't get that anymore. I mean, a lot of people never read a book ever.
Yeah.
They just look up stuff on Facebook and Google it.
Yeah.
And that's the extent of their reading. I read a wiki entry on somebody, So you don't have that frame of reference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good writing, I think you got to read. And it really helps to recognize what's good and what's not.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because it brings to mind a book that I read on writing, and it was written by Stephen King, and he wrote an amazing book for writers. And I think the importance of this book was, he talks about all these great things that you need to do to write well, and it begins and ends with writing, right? I mean, you have to write a lot. But then he also said, at the end, he said, and if you don't read a lot, you're screwed.
It's it. I mean,
if you don't read a lot, you're screwed. I
It
thought
really
that was
is.
good.
You don't recognize good from bad.
Right.
You don't have the frame of reference. So it's critical to you. But, they've said, I don't know, there's quotes of famous people saying, writing stuff that's brief is more difficult, because you really have to think about every word choice that you make.
Yeah.
To me, it comes very naturally. I don't want to waste my time or anybody else's.
Yeah.
Time's the most precious thing we got.
Yep.
So let's get it over with quickly. Whatever we've got to communicate, let's not drag it on and make it confusing.
And
It doesn't help anybody.
And I think the importance is, whether it's somebody that's writing for the news and the receiver is somebody, sitting on their couch at home, or if you're writing to the CEO of a company, their time, each person's time is important,
Right.
and you want to make sure you get your point across, and you want to keep it as simple as possible.
Absolutely.
The KISS method it works here, and I don't have to get into what the acronym stands for, but we've all heard about the KISS method, and we got to keep it simple. I mean, that will make our writing that much better. So A couple of things that you also brought up is that I know one of your huge pet peeves when it comes to writing, and I hear this all the time from you, is that writing mistakes, they can kill you. Even the smallest ones can make an impact in the mind of your reader.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this?
People will think you're dumb.
I knew you were going to say
and
that.
that's bad.
Right.
We just had an interview the other day. We're trying to interview some people in my other business for an accounting job. And so we got this one woman, and she said something, it wasn't this, but it was something like this, where she had a singular, a plural noun and a singular verb, or whatever. Like, here is my credentials, or, something like that. And when I sent that resume on to the person who runs that business, the first comment she came back with is, picked out the one mistake in the cover letter,
right,
and just sent, that was the reply I got.
Right.
Okay? What does that tell you? It says, okay, bad impression.
Right.
This person just made.
Yeah.
They sound stupid.
Yeah.
Or ignorant, or both.
Right.
And we don't need stupid, ignorant people working for us.
Yeah.
Not to say people don't make mistakes.
No,
Obviously, some are
do.
more egregious than others.
Yeah.
Some of them are more forgivable. But so, yeah, everybody's judging you.
Yeah.
Everybody's judging you.
Yeah.
I know people, if they saw, I think we've got a huge problem with apostrophes on plurals these days.
Right.
And you see it everywhere you go. It's like, here are our cars, and it's C-A-R apostrophe S or whatever. It's like, what the hell is that? Well, one of the reasons is our phones do it.
Yeah.
My phone wants to throw an apostrophe on everything that I make a plural. I got to go back and delete the apostrophe, catch that as I'm typing very quickly. And so it's a problem, but, it can make you sound pretty stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you do that, you see it. I mean, we've got a sign that came off an old motel we bought. It says, rooms, ROOM apostrophe S, for rent, $19. It's just a classic sign,
Right. Right.
First off, the rooms were only $19. Secondly, they were so ignorant. That's probably the owners or managers of the motel. That's why the rooms are $19.
Exactly.
So you see this stuff every day, and everybody's judging you. I can tell you, when I worked at Carter and Burgess, if Jerry Allen saw a resume that had 2 mistakes in it, it was it. Done. We're not hiring them.
No questions asked.
They're sloppy. This is their resume. This ought to be the best example of what they can do.
Yeah.
And they have 4 errors in it. Come on. That'd be what he'd say.
Yeah.
I don't care if they're very minor ones. He judged you based on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a certain logic to it.
Oh no, without a doubt. Because even if you don't notice those small things, you can make mistakes once you join an organization. Speaking specifically of resumes and cover letters, but you should make sure that those are well put together before you send them out, and have like 10 people triple check them. And we're going to talk about the importance of having a second eye look at all of your writing materials, because that is
valuable.
important. But that's a different question that I have for you. I will just add that nowadays there is no excuse, because while we in the same minute that you mentioned using your phone, and it is called a smartphone for a reason, sometimes it can make you look dumb. But if used properly, it can make you look really good too.
Sure.
And there is some technology out there nowadays, one that I actually swear by, which basically allows me to not look illiterate to my clients and other people that read my communications. But I use a program called Grammarly online, which allows me to check things.
You can run your Gunning Fog Index.
Oh my gosh, it will check everything. Back in the day, and I remember, and I was trying to look for it, but I don't know if you remember Strunk and White, the old writing book, and there's all kinds of.
That was the classic.
That was the classic Bible for English writers and for people that wanted to write properly and not offend, and make sure that your subject-verb agreements were appropriate and right. But nowadays, I don't think that young people coming out of school are getting and you teach at a university. Yeah. You tell me if I'm wrong, are getting the requisite training in writing.
We're doing a pretty good job of that, tell you the truth.
Okay.
At the Walton College, that was a major change 10 years ago.
Okay. Okay.
was they are smart people and they recognize that the ability to write really impacts people's success no matter what their discipline is.
Okay.
And so we actually work hard to get people to be decent writers.
Okay.
I think the quality of the writing has improved immeasurably over the 15 years I've been teaching.
Okay. That's good.
Surprisingly. Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing is people do write a lot more, even if it is just texting and emailing, even though a lot of that's done wrong, you know. But I think people are getting better in some ways and worse in others.
Yeah.
But now back on the mistakes though, of course, the biggest mistakes people make in this business are they cut and paste and they have the wrong client name or things like that.
Oh man.
Hugely embarrassing.
Yeah.
Hugely,
Yeah.
you know.
That can kill a deal in a minute.
Oh my God. We did it on a report once for a client 20 something years ago, and I just got lambasted by the CEO of the company. And it was one of our guys just did a sloppy search and replace and updated a report that was done for another firm. It was a valuation report, and sure, there's a lot of standard verbiage that goes into that.
Right.
But nevertheless, inexcusable.
Yeah.
You know, it just made us look so bad. Really did.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, again, like I said, use technology to your advantage and figure out ways to leverage that technology to help you in your writing. And certainly, and we're going to talk about it in a second, you make sure that you get somebody else to look over those items before they physically go out and are consumed by somebody else. So, all right, so we talked a little bit about some of your pet peeves and some of the challenges. I guess it makes sense to have someone else go over anything that you write before you send it out. And I know that's something that we do big time.
It does.
Should it now? Here's the question.
Everybody needs it.
Should it be just anyone, or do you need to find someone that writes better than you do?
Well, obviously the latter would be better, right? Sometimes anyone's better than none.
Yeah.
Because our minds trick us.
Yeah.
And we see what we intended to write. But that's not what we put on the paper.
Yeah.
You know, maybe our mind skipped ahead and we just missed a word, and it's a critical word. That's why it's good having that second set of eyes. They're really critical. Everybody should get in the habit of having somebody look at what they did just to catch the obvious mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, we triple check things. I mean, we have somebody that goes through and just from a stylistic standpoint, look at our proposals before we send them out. And I even, certain emails that I send out, I sometimes just get a second set of eyes to look at them. And, you know, we've always, especially if we're, depending on if it's very crucial communication with a client, and maybe you have an issue to bring up or to deal with, I think it's important to, sometimes you even do that whole Oprah method of writing a letter and don't send it yet, but just write a letter.
Sit on it, look at it.
Sit on it, look at it. And
Right.
this is the one time when it's okay to marinate over something before you actually send it out, because
Yes.
written communication can be the lifeblood of an organization, but it can also be the death knell.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that.
You know, and that is a major issue.
Yeah,
And people,
it is.
and especially when you have individuals that aren't classically trained in writing, and you know, they're just for the first time communicating and they're not necessarily doing it effectively, you want to make sure there's somebody behind them to kind of coach them along.
I don't know that we need classically trained writers, though.
Well,
I was talking with a friend of mine this weekend. This guy's written 20 books. He's a
Wow.
PhD. He designs curriculum for a school district here in the state. I haven't seen him in a while. He stopped over at my house on Saturday.
Okay.
And we were talking, and you know, just about writing. He brought his latest book over, and it's a real common sense sort of science book for everyday living, and it just explains stuff in real simple terms. And we were talking about that, and it was like English majors are the worst writers. One of his kids is an English major. He's like, you know, it's just insufferable. He was a journalist himself at one time, and then he became worked as a editor and publisher in a publishing company.
Yeah.
And so his view is a lot different. You know, he's like, man, I like journalistic writing. I hate English majors.
Exactly.
They're too proper. They want to make, you know, I've had people like take the contractions out of stuff I wrote. I'm like, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
What the hell is wrong? I want contractions.
Right.
We
Right.
cannot do that. We would not do that. Come on, who talks like that?
Right. That's
You
funny.
know?
Yeah. Well, and again, I think it's just nobody should talk like that, first of all. Secondly, you should definitely get somebody to really look at your stuff and keep an eye out. And if you are a young engineer or architect and that's like you feel like, well, man, if I go to somebody else on my team and let them review my writing, I might feel like, well, I'm not, I'm not
Showing
a good
my
writer.
weakness
I'm
and-
showing
yeah.
my weakness. Trust me, there are people
That's
that are
stupid.
above your pay grade that write worse than you do. So
I can tell you every single thing I write has errors in it,
yeah,
or could be better.
absolutely,
Every
absolutely.
single thing.
Yeah,
You just don't catch it. Sometimes we're in a hurry. You just don't see it. Your mind fills in.
yeah, and you're too deep into it as well. I mean,
Yeah.
just a second pair of eyes, or as we like to say, a fresh set of eyes can make the world of difference, and it can be the difference in you getting some work and not getting some work. So definitely keep that in mind. My next part, I don't know how to do this, but just to say, thou doth protest too much. Or something like that. You hate stilted lange.
I hate it.
I know you
hate
want
it.
the viewers of this video to stop acting like they live in the 19th century. How so?
As per your request, enclosed herewith, per the above reference, project number, blah, 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 sounds ridiculous. Lawyers all do it.
Yeah.
People in business learn to write business letters and memos and other things from other people who preceded them, who learned from other people who preceded them.
Right.
It's ridiculous. We were doing an in-house seminar for a client last year. We had about 40 young engineers in there, and I had a guy who was like 25 arguing with me about that's proper business writing. And what I wanted to say to the guy was, look, now I'm going to pull rank on you. You're wrong. I'm right.
Right.
Of course, you can't do that.
Yeah.
But that's what I wanted to do, frankly. But no, I see this all the time. Just stop saying it. I sent just yesterday. I reviewed a proposal, and I sent it back to the guy because it said, "We are pleased to present," or no, it said, "Please find the attached report," is what it said, or "Please find the attached proposal." And I said to myself, wouldn't it sound ridiculous if I said that to you?
Right.
Like, did you lose it? Where is
Please
it?
find
In
it.
my upper drawer or behind this couch? Or
Right.
please find. It's like, how about here's our proposal. Our proposal's attached.
Right.
You'll notice blah blah blah. I mean, why do we have to do that? What's the point of that?
Yeah.
It's so hard to get out of that trap. Okay, as per your request. It's ridiculous.
Well, yeah, and I think we see a lot. I think, again, it still boils down to people feeling like it shows a level of maturity and understanding when you write that way. Because it shows that you've got some experience under your belt, and I don't know that that's necessarily the case.
I don't think it is at all. I think it shows that you're probably not as high level in the organization as you think you are, or not as good as you think you are.
Right.
The best communicators I see are the people who are at the top. And it's funny, they should be the busiest. They're usually the fastest responders. They're the most succinct writers, and the most, clear writers. Those people rise to the top. That's why this stuff is so damn critical.
Yeah.
Because it affects your success in every single thing you do. You could think, I'm the greatest designer in the world. I'm so friggin' talented. It's mind-boggling how creative I am, or whatever.
Right.
But if you can't communicate effectively in writing, I guarantee you your success is going to won't be as great as it will be as if you could.
Yeah, I always remember that. I mean, my aunt, who was an attorney and a really good writer, she always reminded me that, listen, that's the one thing they can't take from you. If you can write really well, I mean, you'll go long way.
In any profession, it helps.
So,
law surely would, because the stuff is so confusing to read.
Exactly.
If you could write in a way that it wasn't confusing, you'd have to be a more successful attorney.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would think.
Yeah. No. No. I agree. I agree
So,
100%.
but in every field, I think, you know, and there are people who want to use words that other people don't understand in this business because somehow it makes them feel superior.
Right.
And that's terrible.
Yeah.
There's nothing pisses me off worse than that. Too many acronyms, too many 4-syllable words, 10-syllable words, technical terms that the average person won't understand.
Yeah.
And if I do that, I've seen it with engineers, I've seen it with accountants, I've seen it with financial people, I've seen it with attorneys. And somehow that makes them feel better about themselves, that you and I may not understand what they're saying.
Right.
Well, they're going to show us they're superior, aren't they? And we're dummies. And by the way, we're inferior. And by the way, we're not as smart as they are. And by the way, they're so much better than we are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the message that you get, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So leave the stilted language at home, or leave it in your English book from 11th grade, because you certainly don't need it in business communication, and you actually will look smarter if you don't use it.
Exactly.
So so I would imagine that many of us need to go back to the drawing board when it comes to writing, and I thought about this when you wrote it, but you know, I don't think a lot of people even create outlines before they write stuff out.
Exactly.
Which is a killer. And I know you kind of mentioned it, you know, that you know, just kind of going back to the old term paper process of putting it together. What's the best method for doing this?
That is how I was taught to do it. You know, so you've got 5 paragraphs.
Okay.
The introductory paragraph with a topic sentence, where you tell people what you're going to tell them. Okay.
Right.
Then the 3 body paragraphs. Maybe you've got 3 things in the introductory paragraph that you're going to tell them.
Right.
Then the 3 body paragraphs where you tell them each one is about one of those 3 things. Right. And then the last paragraph, the conclusion is you tell them what you told them. Now, if you think about, you can expand that to 20 points. You could, you know, you could do a lot of things with that outline.
Yeah.
But the whole idea of tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them.
Right.
Is pivotal to your organization. I don't start out here and end up over there.
Yeah.
I wrap it back around, and that's what that outline. You know, the outline's so critical. You can make an outline for anything. In the old days, I used to, you know, put it in a 3-ring binder, put dividers in there for each section, and then I'd start filling it in. You know, I wrote a book like that or whatever. The outline is critical. That's the place to start. That's where you really say, what am I trying to communicate here? And what's the best order that I introduce these points? And what are the linkages that are needed so somebody really understands what I'm saying? I think people would be much better off.
Right.
If they have any kind of difficult writing assignment, to start out with the outline. Don't try to write it all cold. Yeah. You know, without an outline.
It's hard. I mean, you can't do that. Yeah, you can't do that at all. I mean, you have to gather your thoughts and make some, you know, coherent points. And so, intro, three main points or more, depending on what you're trying to say, and then a conclusion. You know, it's funny when you say this and you describe it, it almost sounds very similar to how copywriters write. Where they have an intro and then they talk about benefits and features and benefits, and then they conclude back. But in each time they go back and tell you, this is why this matters, this is why that matters, this is why that matters. And in each time in the mind of the reader, the person that you're trying to get to read this material, you want to have them be reinforced with whatever idea you're trying to get across to them. And following some type of outline and some theme in terms of how you write will help you to reinforce those ideas that you're trying to convey to the listener.
I just got one of the best examples of that. So I was laying there. I've been trying to put a new heat pump pool heater on my swimming pool.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I've been dealing with a local company, and I got a price from them last fall before I moved into the house I just moved into. And now I just got the official, they gave me a price. They gave me a new contract yesterday, and it was $1,500 higher. And I thought, that's ridiculous. So I did a little Google of the heat pump they were selling me. and they wanted $5,099 for what I could buy for a little over $3,000 online.
Wow.
The same identical part number, product,
Yeah.
everything. No tax, shipping included. Okay? So then I started doing a little more research. I thought, you know what? These guys, they just threw that at me. Maybe they're not giving me the right pool heater I need.
Yeah.
So I Google that. How do I size a pool heat pump? So I Google it. I find this site. It says, here's a tool. It asks you these questions. What are the external dimensions of your pool? Where do you live? What season do you want to use your pool? I said April to October. I live in Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
And how many? I got 15,000 gallons. It's not a real big pool.
Right.
Okay. It asked me that. Size, all this stuff. Okay. So you throw that all into this form, and then they said, we will contact you. Of course, I didn't know that. I thought, oh, damn, now they got me with a sales pitch. Okay, but the point is, so what I get back from this company
Mm-hmm.
is a very short time later, it tells me you need this size pool heater. Here's the answers to all your questions. By the way, we recommend this one first. Here it is, and here's the price, and here's all the performance specs, or this one's our second rated. Now we're going to go into all the other pool heaters you could buy and what's wrong with them. They talk about the efficiency rating, the BTUs, the capacity of flow through,
Mm-hmm.
the noise, the decibel level,
Yeah.
where it's made, and what the warranty is.
Wow.
And it was completely listed out. There was no BS. And the guy's like, here's a link if you want to order this one. Here's a link if you want to order this one. This was custom made for me. All my questions are answered.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and signed with his name. Any other questions, you can call me or email me. Here it is. So I went back to him, and needless to say, that's who I'm buying my pool heater from.
Yeah, I guess
now,
so.
Now I'm getting one for $2,900 that's a different brand, has better performance specifications in every way, made in the United States versus Mexico, which is
Okay.
where I was getting the other one.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, this is fantastic, but it's so clear. They knew exactly what they wanted to
Yeah,
communicate to me.
yeah.
I didn't ask about warranties or place it was manufactured, but you know what? That was damn good information to have.
It was.
And
It
I thought,
was.
these guys know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
The link is there. Everything is beautiful. That's why I'm buying from them.
Mm-hmm.
Clear, succinct, logical sequence of communication.
Now, and that's a great example, and that's an example of a successful $2,900 letter.
Yeah, it is.
The thing about it, though, is that, Mark, you and I both know that a lot of the people watching this video are dealing with numbers way larger than that.
Exactly, and that's why it's even more critical.
So
People need to have things explained to them.
Yeah.
Here are your options. These are some of the differences. I mean, honestly, architects and engineers do a horrible job with that.
Yeah.
I will say this that I've learned over the years, having a small development and construction company. The architects and engineers that work on small projects are not as good as the ones that do really big projects.
Yeah.
Yes, they cost more. They're better communicators. They're better at what they do. They're better at explaining your options and your choices.
Mm-hmm.
And so as you move up the food chain in terms of firm success
Right.
and prominence, the quality of the service improves and the quality of the communications improve. But sure, it's much more critical with a $200,000 decision or a $5 million decision
Yeah.
that you're a clear communicator than it is a $2,900 decision. I mean, good point.
And I like how you laid that out, because again, while you may not have considered some of those other things that they brought up, they were still doesn't not make them still valid.
Exactly, and valuable to know.
Exactly. Yeah. So which is why, and it brings me back to some of the proposals that we write. And I know some of the proposals that you guys are part of putting together. You need to be taking into consideration the end user, who's going to read this. What are their biggest pain points, and how they could overcome those pain points by your service, what you're offering to do for them.
It even goes beyond proposals. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you're right. It certainly is critical with proposals, but it's also critical in trying to get clients to do what you think they need to do.
Yeah.
You've got to sell that.
Absolutely.
You've got to sell your solution.
Yeah.
Your solution may not be what they thought they needed or wanted initially.
And they may fight you on it.
And they may fight you.
Yeah,
So your logic, your ability to get the the points across as to why that's the best course of action, that really separates the people who are great at their business of architecture and engineering and those that aren't.
Yeah,
They can
absolutely.
get people to do what they didn't necessarily want to do, but what's in their best interest. And then when you do that, you got a client for life. You know?
Yeah.
So
It goes without saying. It goes without saying. So, well, you've laid out a number of things that can help an individual write better. One of those issues, and we brought it up earlier in our conversation, but what do we do with these 25-cent words in your writing? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I guess you say the 25-cent words, you're talking about the big, long words.
Well, you mentioned obfuscate as soon as we started talking. So
or utilize is my favorite. Utilize.
So.
We never use anything. We utilize. We are utilizing a single cell box girder.
Right.
We're not using a single cell box girder.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I don't know why people do it.
Yeah.
Again, I like contractions.
But I'm smart. I want to show them smart.
Yeah, I want to show them some bigger words. It makes you sound dumb.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It actually makes you sound dumb, especially if you ever use a big word inappropriately.
Yeah.
Then you really look bad. Okay?
That's
but
for
just
sure.
always having to use big words that other people may not understand. I've done it myself at times accidentally. The other day, we were in a business planning session and I used the term draconian, and the president of the company looked at me. He's like, "Look, I'm just a dumb mechanical engineer. I don't know what the hell that means. What do you?" And I explained it to him. What it meant, and I thought, that's a good point though.
Yeah.
Why, he doesn't know, maybe a lot of people don't understand what that means.
Exactly.
And,
When you say draconian measures, it's like, whoa, and that's actually a good word. I like that word. It's a nice word, but you're right. You're absolutely right. You never know. And you might be in a room with a guy making $400,000 a year who won't know what the heck draconian means.
Exactly. And we could say like overly strict or overly harsh or, we're talking about policies.
Yeah.
Is what we were talking about.
Yeah.
And anyway, I'm sure I could have explained it a better way than using that word. But people just seem married to this idea that will complicate things. Sometimes, I don't know. My theory on it is it's a deep-seated insecurity.
Yeah.
Is what it evidences.
Yeah.
It's evidence of real insecurity.
Right.
Because if you're secure, you don't need to try to impress anybody.
Yeah. That's true. So, but you look at all the great writers. I mean, all the great writers, and they all talk about how less is more.
Yeah.
And keeping it as simple as possible.
And then you got like Joseph Conrad, who writes like 10-page long paragraphs.
Yeah.
But
of really long words. Absolutely. So. And this is a point I want to bring up, and I really want people to pay attention to this part of it as we close up here. But finally, you mentioned to me a long time ago that you should never insult or chastise in writing, and I always took that to heart. I really did. But why don't you just explain what you mean by that, and how you've seen this issue impact writers in the design industry?
I wish I had a specific example right now, but I've seen people do it in our firm, in firms that I worked at, and in client companies, where they basically point out that the client is an idiot.
Yeah.
Okay, you should know this. Pull rank on them. Tell them, I told you this would never work, and now, here's the proof of it. Nobody wants to see that. You've got to deal with those kinds of things verbally and tactfully, or you'll make an enemy for life. I mean, some people never forgive.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
But, there are some people out there that have very, very, I think I do because my memory is so poor that I don't even remember all the bad things people have done to me. Seriously, some people never forget.
Yeah.
And especially embarrassing people in front of other people, talking down to them in a condescending way with your writing.
Yes.
You wouldn't understand this. Those kinds of phrases you really have to be very, very careful of. or terms, I had an insurance guy once that said to the manager of my other business, he called her little lady. She didn't like that.
Yeah.
Okay, she's like, little lady, my ass. You know?
Yeah.
I'm running this business. Don't call me little lady.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
But talking down to people, telling them how stupid they are, pointing out the mistakes that they made in a way that doesn't give them an out. It's just no point in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be a nice guy. Be somebody that people like. Be somebody who can let people save face.
Yeah.
If any way possible. If they had good intentions, don't try to make them feel bad or look bad.
I mean, there's always a time and a place for everything. I think certainly with writing, I mean, you should, especially in business writing, most of your business writing should be from a vantage point of building up and not tearing down. And I think that goes a long way. So take that to heart. And, again, especially with this new generation that has been, that has grown up in communicating via Facebook and Twitter.
That stuff's going to be out there forever.
It is going to be out there forever.
That's the other thing. So you really have to be careful.
You have to be careful about what you write.
Yeah, you can't get rid of it.
Even more so than just what you say in video and what have you. And it comes up time and time again. So
it does.
All right, Mark, you've given us a ton to think about as we develop our writing abilities, and I feel like I'm even a better writer just sitting here with you today. But anyway, how do we know if we're even reaching our client effectively with the things that you've previously mentioned? How do you determine the effectiveness of the written word in our business communication?
Are we getting what we want? Are we getting people to do what we want them to do?
Okay.
Are we getting the response that we want to get?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems to me that's not that hard to figure out. Did they like our report? Did they value our recommendations? Are they following our recommendations? Do they buy from us? Are we friends? Are we continuing to be clients? Are they coming back to us with new problems to solve? Hell, it's not that hard to figure out whether stuff's working or not.
Yeah.
Am I having a lot of miscommunications with people? Are people always angry at me? Do I feel bad about stuff that I put in writing?
Yeah.
Are other people talking about me? Am I not influencing people like I want to influence them?
Mm-hmm.
In a positive way?
Yeah.
Do people not seem to respect me? I mean, I think there's a lot of ways you could figure out this stuff. The signs are pretty clear.
Right. Right.
You're either, whether you're a good communicator or not with your writing. And
it will, yeah. You'll get or figure out what the audience's response is fairly quickly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's good.
I think journalism training is great for people. They just need to understand basic concepts like who, what, when, where, how, and why.
Exactly.
Get
in and get out. That was all.
Yeah.
It was the best time.
I
do. It was the best time ever. I picked it up from my grandfather, but also my short stint at ABC. If nothing else, and I went to a great college, and I took several English classes and writing classes, but nothing trained me more than writing for the news.
Yeah.
You just cut out all the BS.
Exactly.
And go right to the point, because it's an economy of words and you have very little time.
Exactly.
And you've got to inform people about what's going on.
It's great training. I tell you.
It is.
I think the worst training is stuff like English comp. Honest to God, it's just, I don't think most people benefit from it.
Mm-mm.
I think in fact, in some cases, it may teach them some bad stuff to do.
Yeah.
When you really want to be an effective communicator. Not necessarily bad from the standpoint of purity of your grammar and
right.
Usage or whatever, but bad from the standpoint of how are people going to perceive me? How am I being, are they open to what I have to communicate to them? And will they listen to what I'm trying to get them to do?
Right. Right. So, and I know we talked about it just a little bit for a second, but before I forget, I know we talked about general writing practices. With the advent of social media, how does that play in? And I'm talking specifically purely from writing skills. Yes, don't write stupid stuff on social media. I think that just goes without saying. But how does that play into our writing skills from a business perspective, should we be doing anything differently when we text, post on LinkedIn or Facebook, etc., business-wise? And what I'm speaking about, like if I'm communicating or texting a client, or if I am posting a message on LinkedIn to a client, or if I'm posting something on our Facebook page or on a client's Facebook page, how should that communication go? Because clearly, I'm assuming that common sense is going to prevail in most situations. But I mean, just in your eyes, are there any other best practices?
Don't be argumentative.
Okay.
Don't go looking for a fight.
Okay.
And don't put anything down in writing online that you wouldn't want anybody else to see at any point during the future.
Yeah.
I think those are the things you really have to be thinking about, because
and proprietary information
it could be used to embarrass you. It
Yeah.
could be very damaging. So I just, I think it's just a good idea to try not to create enemies.
Yeah.
It is one thing. I think texting, people get very, very sloppy.
Yes.
Maybe they're getting too sloppy.
Yeah.
They say probably instead of probably, gimme instead of give me, and
I must be old school because I still try to write out all of my words for the most part. Although I've learned some really good, unique, short, abbreviated words. Like I've learned some new ones I can't mention on this show, but I've learned several. But I think it's kind of fun for that. But just know the time and the place of when to use those things.
Yeah, there are emojis. I didn't even know what they meant.
Yeah.
And now I'm learning these things.
Yeah, and that's not writing, but I mean, it's just the idea.
It could be used in a text.
Yeah,
I mean,
it can be.
But I think maybe the young folks can turn us on to some of the stuff, but I'd be very careful in using some of those.
Oh, absolutely.
Things that not everybody's going to understand.
Yeah.
Not everybody wants to text either. I mean, I like texting.
I like texting too. Some people don't like it. Yeah.
Some people don't like it.
And you can tell. You can almost tell when you text you back. It's almost like they've breathed a heavy sigh when they text you, and you're like, okay, I realize I'm invading your space, so I don't want to.
They'd rather call. So, I would almost always rather have a text, because a call, I got to stop what I'm doing. I could respond to a text. When we take a break here, I could respond to a text in 90 seconds.
Exactly.
I can't call somebody and get through to them and get through the warm up and do what I need to do in 90 seconds.
And because you know how to write, you can effectively communicate even through a text.
Sure.
Which is key. So
it's clarity and brevity. I mean, those mandates are in everything you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, thanks so much, man, for sharing so many great tips on getting the most out of our business writing. Do you have any final thoughts to share before we close out this ZLearning session?
I think, take a course in business writing.
Okay.
They'll show you words to use and words to avoid. They will talk about commonly misused phrases and help you. I think when you're conscious of these things, you're much less likely to do them.
Right.
So there are some out there that are very specific. We used to run all our employees through one, and we had words and phrases to avoid. Was a big part of it.
Yeah.
No, I think, we covered a lot of what I wanted to cover. I just would emphasize the idea that, back on this speed notion, if you don't have time to respond right now to somebody, when are you going to have time?
Right.
When are you, you're too busy to respond now. You think you're not going to be too busy later?
Yeah.
Why is that? I can't get people to understand this. There are so many things that languish for no reason at all. Be quick.
Be quick.
It's one thing you can do.
Yeah, and again, and we'll have to. We're going to do a program on some soft skill things and some other areas of training that I think will help out the viewers of this and help engineers and architects be more efficient. I can think of templates. I can think of a number of things that you can employ that will allow you to kind of speed that process up and make sure you have the right message every time to get back to a client.
Yeah, one thing that I'm glad you did mention that I forgot to mention. Sometimes you need to take out a clean sheet of paper. Stop going back to the last proposal or the last letter you wrote or the last email you wrote and changing a few words and sending it out. Man, sometimes just get out a clean sheet of paper, make your outline, fill it all in new. Don't grab any of the boilerplate. You'll be a lot better.
We're actually going to talk about that when we do our presentation training, because I think that's going to be important, and you won't want to miss that training coming up. So, but thanks again, Mark. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's great being here.
I want to thank you for watching this ZLearning episode on writing better texts, emails, and letters. Remember, in order to get continuing education credit, you must follow the instructions in the email that came along with this video. Complete a short quiz and a certificate will be provided to you immediately. If you'd like to share this video with your office in a lunch and learn format, you can do so easily. You only need to purchase additional quizzes for the number of people that watch the video and want to get their continuing education credit. Check your email when you order this video for additional information. You can always email us here at elearning@zweiggroup.com. You can also email us with any feedback or thoughts too. We love feedback, and we especially love to hear from anyone that was impacted in a positive way by this video training. Stay tuned for our next ZLearning class, how you can be more successful through creating better presentations. Whether you are looking for online continuing education classes in project management, business development, marketing, leadership, or financial management for AEC professionals, ZLearning has got you covered. Zweig Group's ZLearning offers fresh and relevant content that won't put you to sleep. Visit us at zweiggroup.com/ZLearning for more information and a list of our classes and services. Until the next CEU, we'll see you later.